Alright, something completely different now. I'm going to show you how to make music with letters and numbers in a sound chip. Basically, I just started with these diagrams here, which are kind of just an explanation of how to count to F, which if like nobody knows, it's like 16. It's like not base 10, it's base 16. And that's really convenient because a lot of music is divided up into 16ths, like a bar of 16th notes, or like the sequencer on a 909 or an 808 or something like that. It might look kind of familiar. So you could see if like you had a bunch of 16th notes in hex, it would be every value, and if you had a bunch of 8th notes, it would be every other value. And then quarter notes. Then over here, I have a representation of the program I use is called the tracker. Maybe you guys saw it when I was flipping through it before. It's basically a spreadsheet. Each column represents a different sound channel, and each row is a time division that can be to whatever you choose. The one that a lot of people use that's really convenient is just using one row per 16th note, because every time you hit a new tens place, you get a new bar of measures, so it would roll over from 0F to 10, and you would have your new measure, and it would be really easy to visually discern what your next bar is. Here are some other note values showing what the hex value would be. If it was quarter notes, it would be 1, 4, 8, and C. And if it was just half notes, it would be that. And if it was just a whole note, you would just use the top one. I don't use a row per 16th note because I'm crazy. I use 6 rows per 16th note. So it looks something like this. So like your first 16th note would be there, and then there, and there, and then that would be like the new bar. This actually just represents the first beat of a bar of 4/4. So every 18 values in hex, you would have a new quarter note. So every 6 rows is a 16th note. So just kind of laying out the logic of how that goes, and I'll open up the program and show you guys some basics of the sound design. Since this is a chip tracker, it's not a sample tracker. There's no sampling or presets or anything. You just have a 2 or 4 operator FM synthesizer that you can set the parameters to however you want. And so basically all you're doing is telling it to play a note, an instrument patch you made, and then this is here in the columns you see. The first value would be your note, and then you have your instrument definition, which corresponds to this in the instrument editor here, and then you have 2 spots for commands, and you have a whole litany of tons and tons of commands to do different things with the sequencer, with the parameters. You see the first one is arpeggios. You can do like little chordy arpeggios or pitch bends, vibratos, volume slides, everything, all this fun stuff. So you can pretty much have total complete control over the sequencer and the voices of any voice in time, and you can kind of just plop it down at exactly the time value you want to. So I guess what I'll do is just start making a track and just like kind of explain everything I do. Basically, I guess before that I'll go through like the basic areas of the program. This is like the main screen. This is the pattern screen. So this is where you put the data, and each pattern here is stored in the top with the pattern order. So if this is like pattern 0, I hit enter to get up there. You tell it to play pattern 0, and then pattern 1, and then you hit enter again back to the pattern editor. And if you hit page down and shift, you get to the different patterns. So this is 1, pattern 2, pattern 3, and this is where you would put your patterns down, and then you would order them here. And then of course you could just put a ton of pattern 0 if you wanted to, or arrange them however you want. And there's a if you hit Control P, there's a pattern manager, so you can name them if you want to. So you can actually have some organization, copy paste from pattern to pattern if you wanted to duplicate one and then make subtle changes to it, as opposed to just copy pasting from one screen to another. The manual screen is probably one of the most important things. It's not really a manual as much as just a key reference. If you press F1 on any part of the program, it'll take you to the relevant section. This is just the basic stuff like playback, save and load. And then if you took it over to like the instrument editor, if you hit F1, it'll tell you like the different instrument control panel references. I was talking to the developer about why there's no manual, and he said that when this program was being developed, like a lot of people there's no such thing as YouTube tutorials, and people just kind of had the inclination to experiment and try stuff out on their own, and given a key reference, that's all you really needed, and that's all you pretty much basically do, just experiment with the different commands. Oops. All the different effects, like if you don't know what a retrigger is, you just throw it down and see how it works, and it's like, oh, that's how it works, and that's how you really get the best sense of the behavior of all this stuff. So let's get on to the sound part of it. So this uses FM synthesis, which unlike subtractive synthesis, there's no filters or anything, so you just have two oscillators that you're kind of multiplying together. Unlike additive synthesis, where you would just kind of stack two sounds and you hear them both at the same time, with FM, you're literally modulating one sound by another. If you guys are familiar with an LFO or something like that, like a low frequency oscillator, it's kind of like an audio rate LFO, and the rate that it goes is in a whole number ratio to the carrier, so you get a musical sound as opposed to just like random noise. And so when you frequency modulate, you can start off just with a sine wave and then multiply up to get your higher harmonics, versus starting with like something like a square or a sawtooth and subtracting down or something like that. So you can still definitely, like here, I'll demonstrate by just what I'm doing here is turning on the envelope generators so it can actually make a sound. And if you just want to have like a sound that's totally on, all you have to do is just turn the attack on and leave all the other values fine, and it'll just be like a sound that will just ring out like forever, no envelope. And this right now, this is two sine waves with the same ratio with full frequency modulation. So it sounds kind of buzzy and like gnarly, but if you turn it down, kind of get some like mellower stuff. And then one of the most important things, or really the only things that you can really mess with, are the envelopes. How many, just a show of hands, how many people know what an envelope generator is? Okay, cool. So like most of you guys, so I'm not gonna bother with that. But yeah, so you have an envelope generator with ADSR, and it's only an AS or ADR unless you set the sustain down here. You can set it to be sustain or not sustain. So with some envelope generation, you have like you're just basically controlling the level at which you're modulating the carrier with the modulator over time. So you can set that to taste. Oops. So, and really, like, the FM is kind of weird and random, and the best thing to do is just like mess around and try different waveforms and different ratios, and the effects, and see what the effects of the vibrato and tremolo are, and just kind of goof around until you find something that you like. So I'll just get into making like a drum kit, I guess. So start off. You know what? And I'm just gonna copy the bass drum for expediency. Snare. Okay. And we're gonna do the same thing we did with the bass drum to make it. I'm gonna put it in this new pattern and then just loop the first beat and listen to it while I mess with it. Let's see. And since it's a snare drum and not a bass drum, I'm gonna maybe make it start higher up. Right. Oh, and what's something that's cool about making music this way, or with synthesis in general, you can kind of tune all of your drum instruments and everything to each other, kind of like with this bass drum. If you listen, you can actually like hear how the bass drum, where like at each step which pitch it resolves to, so you can be really exact to like, if you want your bass drum to actually be a note and end on a note, you can actually do that. And if you were really crafty, you could maybe even use like a portamento. You all know what portamento is, like when you slide between. I could maybe just throw a portamento directly before this, or used a ghost note with this muted, and then when use very fast portamento to kind of make a pitch bend, so I could just go between two tones without having to screw around with figuring out like what note I'm at. So it would kind of just slap between two to make that bass drum sound. So all right, so here we have snare drum, and start looping. Put the pitch envelope on there. That is a hard snare. I'm going to put a gate on here so it just stops immediately, so it doesn't kind of ring out. Let's see. Oh, right now this is just like the body portion. I forgot to tell you. I'm kind of making a snare like a 909 where you have noise, pretty much like some noise and a sine wave kind of thing happening, and it kind of gets that 909 snare sound. So put it here. So we got that. And then to make the noise component, I'm basically just going to copy the hi-hat. Oops. And I'm going to make the envelope longer. I'm trying to get the tone out of there. I shouldn't be there. So what's kind of cool about the chip, you hear that weird random periodic stuff? Yeah, you don't get that from the software usually. Alright, that's cool. Alright, so we have that. So now let's like mess with the volume of the noise. Sure, why not? That's good enough. All right, so here, what I'm going to do now to put it into the tune, I'm literally just going to grab it off this pattern and just plunk it down into the other one. And got that one. Go down, 2, 3, paste. Copy, paste. Oops. So I just totally put this on the wrong channel, and the wrong pattern, I mean. But what I can do is I can just very quickly highlight both of them and put them, and then hit page up and shift to get to the pattern 0, where I was before, and paste them down. And even though you can't see it, they're there. Oh, I guess not, they're not there. Okay. Sorry. Okay. What happened? Sorry, technical difficulty. Oh, I'm playing the wrong pattern, that's why. Well, that's all jacked up, but let's see. Sorry, hold on. I don't know why it's sounding jacked. Oh, I was missing a hi-hat, that's why. Here we go. There we go. That's what I was trying to do. Sorry it took so long. Okay, cool. Now, why not? This is like you might think this is an old program, but this was actually updated like 2 weeks ago. I guess it doesn't say on here. Oh yeah, well, whatever. And he just added in this really handy note recorder thing that actually lets you perform in your part instead of having to type it in, which is very expedient. So I'll show you how to do that. What you do, you like hit Control Spacebar, and you see this little thing flashing up there, and then you engage it playing. And then there. No quantize though. It's kind of lame. Sorry. So yeah, it's like, that's that. Does anybody have any more like specific questions before I just go off into like making a song land? Anything?
We want to see a song.
Do you want to like actually see like something I'm working on? All right, cool.
Yeah.
Why not? All right.
Could you maybe talk a little bit about why you love working this way?
I just like I never was like really big on sampling or anything. I always liked synthesis-based sound design. And then, you know, like everybody gets obsessed with like getting a synthesizer, and synthesizers are expensive, and this computer was like $50. So it's kind of cool to have like something, when you're playing with it, you get this sense of like having a physical synthesizer. It's not like messing around with a plugin because you have something in your hands, and you kind of do get unpredictable results a lot. And it's, you know, like what other synth can you think of has 18 voices and a sequencer? It's kind of like built in all into it. It's a hell of a lot easier than plugging a bunch of stuff in, I think, when you just want to make music.
Well, what do you feel about this system? What does it do for you for the type of sound that you want to create, the type of music that you want to create? Like the process of it. How is the process?
I think having it all like laid out, kind of like this, makes it really easy to like visualize. Be like beyond a piano roll that you can kind of just expand and shrink down infinitely. Like unless like those doesn't kind of like mean much after a while, I feel like, but you can kind of just like think about like, oh well, if I want the last 16th note before the bar ends, like, well, here it is. It's like right there. It's a nice way to kind of like plan everything out. And like I was mentioning before, up here in the columns in the pattern order, each one of those set of 4 patterns is 8 bars. So if you're making something more dance oriented, it's kind of easy to give it symmetry and all that stuff. I mean, if you're only working in 4/4, it's like it's really perfect. But you can also like, you know, I shouldn't say that, because you can set the pattern length to be whatever you want to, and put the pattern break in there to advance whenever you want to. So you could totally make something in 11/4 or something that doesn't even exist if you wanted to. Yeah, I don't know. You just kind of get a hang of for doing it. If you ever mess with like a XOX style, like an 808 or 909, and you kind of like just know exactly what part of the measure you want to put your element down in, it's kind of like that. I think if I was put to it, I could probably like compose something without even hearing it, just by putting it down like where I know it should be, kind of more or less. Which, yeah, sometimes I'll do that. Like I'll put a whole bunch of stuff down, and then I'll listen to it and be like, yeah, that's like not what I wanted. That is what I wanted. So I'll pull something up to they're like ducking the volume with volume slides. That are bass drum happening. Oh yeah, I said that's that one, I guess. And that little thing you saw in there, that's like a pattern. What is it? It's like a pattern loop. Like you can do like little recursive loops and stuff like that, and all sorts of fun stuff. Any other questions?
What's your background?
Yeah, I don't know. I used like Ableton Operator a lot before I used this. I don't know why. I just got really into FM synthesis. So I used that like a lot, and then since FM is like it's like the most simple form of digital synthesis, it's all theoretically backwards compatible. So the stuff that I was making with Operator, I could technically make with AdLib, albeit with like much worse envelopes, and the oscillators are not like, they're not like as this exactly the same. But if you kind of have a knack for FM, you can kind of walk up to any FM synthesis and like kind of make a sound with it. Yeah. But yeah, I'm not like the last guy said, I'm not a programmer, and I'm not a hacker or anything like that. Yeah. Anything else? Anybody else?
Can we see another one?
Yeah, sure. We'll pull something else. I'm trying to find some stuff that I might not play.
Or maybe preview something you might do tomorrow.
Oh yeah, totally. I'll play something like that. I'll play like the last one I worked on. I've been working on it. Sounds pretty good. I think this is it. I asked the developer to add in something where you can paste in reverse, and that's kind of like what you're hearing. Because I like listening to music backwards. And that's that one. Thanks, guys.
I have one last question.
Mhm.
Which I think people have commented on a lot, which is like how rich the sound is that you get out of this. Like, because we've been listening to so much stuff all day, and like the production level, like just the quality of it, like feeling of it is like on par, and it's like super contemporary. Like, how do you like get those sounds?
I think like reading a lot about FM, like the little there is out there, you'll read stuff, people will be like, oh, it sounds cheesy, or you can't make proper percussion sounds, and I just kind of like just sat with stuff, and then I got hints of stuff that sounded really good, and I figured out if I just like sit with something and mess with it until it sounds really good, it's kind of possible for every element. And so I don't know, I guess it kind of takes away from the compositional process, but I just spend a lot of time messing with stuff until you can kind of get there. Like with this one, like the lead sound is actually three, let's see if I can find it. It's 3 notes at the same time, so, oops. Oh, come on.
So you're saying that you find like really interesting ways of layering or playing?
Yeah, like you just kind of like mess around with like even something as stupid as just like detuning it. Oh, that's not a good example. I mean, like, cause just one of these by itself, it just sounds like.
Right. It has like this sound.
Yeah, but if you like stick a bunch, if like you just like layer a bunch of detuned oscillators, it'll sound fat. Yeah, and yeah, doing stuff with like a lot of commands. So. Like variations of like envelope, and so you're not just using the basic envelopes. So like that thing I did with the bass drum initially, like maybe you guys might not notice it about that much, but like I noticed like a huge difference. It kind of like you're kind of faking compression just by messing with it. So just kind of thinking about what you can do to make it to achieve whatever specific little thing you want to do at the time. What else do I do? There's also stuff like cheesy stuff you can do. I don't think I played anything in here that has it, but like, let's see, if I wanted to like do fake delay, I could literally just copy all of these and paste them like a 16th note down, so now it sounds like, it'll sound like this. So like, I screwed up. I don't like the delay. Stop. My neighbors hate me.
Well, any other questions before we wrap up?
It just sounds interestingly like the operator took you back to the old school. Like you got somebody cut your teeth on that, and took the concepts of FM to something like, not in an analog sense, but in like an early sense. I
guess like I kind of like minimal, like kind of techie sounds anyway, and I was just like blown away by how many like sweet sounds are only 2 oscillators, like this. Oops. Like that's like that M1 organ. Come on. It's just 2 operators. You could do that with operator, or you could do it with this, or you could go get an organ. I don't know. Yeah, but yeah, FM is just like it's just really, really versatile. Even though I'm only using like 2 operators, and I found like going back to Lauren's thing, people also say it's kind of like clean sounding. If you listen to other FM stuff, it's like kind of like Sega Genesis sounding. But I think a lot of people, it sounds maybe weird, but they'll just, let's see if I can find it. They'll just start off with the modulator like all the way up here, where I kind of found like starting at almost at the bottom or the middle is kind of like a good place to like find good sounds, because it's not like, I'll just go through the dial here so you hear how it sounds when I change the modulator. I guess this was not that dramatic, but I mean, like if you could, I don't know, if you don't kind of like experiment, there's not that many parameters, but this one's not a great example, but sometimes if you get to like halfway in the middle, it'll just be like totally different sound altogether. It'll be like, oh, this just went from disgusting to a very nice electric piano.